Hey folks, welcome back to the channel. I hope everybody's doing great. Today we're going to take a look at the RCBS automatic priming tool. So this is something where I've been on kind of a continued journey to find a hand priming tool or a bench mounted tool now. Some sort of priming tool that I can use that's easy to use, it's effective, it doesn't have issues, it's easy to change things around if you need to. And it just gets the job done with minimal fuss. Definitely as I've gotten older, I've reached a point where whenever I'm dealing with things, if it's going to be an ass pain, I'm just not interested. Especially if, it's a thing of where if the juice isn't worth the squeeze, then it's time to move on and do something else. So if you remember, if you followed my channel for a while, I did a review on the Frankfurt Arsenal hand priming tool back in December. And well, that didn't go well. It didn't really work well. The video was a little long and there were some people that kind of complained about it or weren't happy with the review. But I just call them as I see it, and I put the time in terms of over several weeks of filming different segments to kind of show and document exactly the issues I was having with it and why it wasn't working, at least as far as I could see. So after that whole kind of debacle of getting that tool, paying for it, and basically it didn't work, I started looking around because I need something else for other solutions. And one of the things that seemed to me was that a lot of the hand priming tools out there, I don't know, you get a lot of mixed reviews on them. And there was a Lee hand priming tool that I had used for many years till it just started to wear out. And actually I would have been happy having one of those again, but Lee doesn't make them anymore and they've moved on in different directions with their stuff. So anyways, looking around, I was open to different ideas, and RCBS makes this bench mounted tool. And I thought, well, you know what, maybe let's kind of change things up a little bit and, look at something that's different. Yes, it's not a hand priming tool, but maybe it's a thing where perhaps I can mount it to a block of wood and then use, use a clamp or something like here. A lot of times in the back of the Kubota RTV, this ends up kind of being my workbench. So, maybe that'll do the trick. Or if I have to, I can mount it to a bench, or, you can get RCBS's plates and then, attach that to your bench, whatever. And, I'll figure out here very shortly what I'm going to do and my approach to that. But anyways, I thought, let's go down a different road. So a lot of the hand priming tools that I looked at with a lot of reviews, you just see a lot of mixed reviews where, so I'm like, okay, it's time to do something different. Now, I know everyone out there, or a lot of folks, they have their preferred brand for reloading stuff. And, they're green or they're red or they're yellow, orange or whatever. All these different colors, and they get very set on, this is the only brand I'm going to use for everything. I've never been that way at all. I don't really get into a lot of brand loyalty type stuff. If it's a product that works at a price I can afford or am willing to budget for, that's what I look for. I don't really, get suckered into marketing hype and stuff like that. So for me, all the reloading stuff that I have, you'll see a wide variety. I mean, I pretty much have like every brand out there of just about everything. So I don't have much in the way of huge preferences or anything like that. So the one concern I did have with buying the RCBS tool is I have found some of their stuff in the past, for lack of a better word, to be fiddly. In other words, it is a pain to change it over to this or change it over to that. Their dies, compared to like Redding dies, just seem to be a little more of a pain to set up, at least in my experience. So that was the one concern that I had about purchasing this tool, is just the way RCBS designs their stuff. Sometimes it just seems to be kind of a pain. And for me, I'm getting to the point where in my life where if stuff is kind of a pain to change over or to use, then typically I want to move on to something else. But it did sound like this was relatively easy to set up and use and everything, so we're going to give it a punt, and we're going to see how well it does. All right, so we've got it out of the box. So in a little baggie comes your primer punches, and you have to put them together yourself. So there's a little rod that screws in to these bigger steel rods, and then there's a cup for your primer, and then a spring. So to tighten it down, you just have to there's like a little hole right here at the top of the screw. You just have to kind of pull the primer cup down, and then just use a paper clip to tighten them up. So I guess they do this and they have you assemble them yourself. So I guess in the future, if the spring goes bad or whatever, I mean, you know, I can't really see that happening, but maybe it does. I don't know if you do hundreds of thousands of rounds through this tool, maybe. But anyways, they make it as such that if you need to replace it, I guess you can. So, and then they just, I guess, sit right here. So, and then all you got to do to use one is actually just drop it in. So yeah, that's pretty simple. And then the next thing is you have your primer pickup tubes. So these look like your bog standard you know, primer pickup tubes that, you know, Hornady and others, they look pretty much identical, really. So you get a primer tray, get your primers on the tray with the cup side down, and then essentially go along and just pick them up one by one. Pretty easy if you've done it before, no problem. And then you flip them upside down, and then I guess put it into the tool. And then so once you've done that, and then you'll just pull the pin right here, and all the primers will slide down in there. And just like a progressive press, so if you've used it before, pretty much a similar type setup, you know, pretty simple, pretty easy to use. And then so you got two of those, and then you just have your tool right here. So we just have to mount the tool. The one thing I noticed with it is that it does have to be mounted as such that it's either up a bit, so it's going to have to be screwed into a block of wood, or it's going to have to be turned the other way to use on your bench, which of course is kind of what I think the thinking is. But, you know, so flat like this won't be enough for the leverage. So anyways, I'll have to decide, do I want to mount it to the bench, or do I want to mount it to a block of wood and kind of keep it more portable and then clamp it down? That's something I'll have to put a little bit of thought into. I'm kind of leaning towards perhaps getting the RCBS plate and then just screwing it into that, and then maybe mounting that to either the bench. That might be kind of the easiest thing to do. I don't know. I'll have to think about it. And then also in the box, they have a little safety warning. You know, I guess people love to pound on primers. You know, obviously you don't want to do that. Don't do that. And then also too, they have instructions here as well. And as common with RCBS, they also have the instructions for other tools as well. So they basically just print up one sheet for multiple different tools. Like for instance, they got the Berdan decapping tool instructions here, for instance. So I guess they just do that for simplicity reasons, just to print one sheet for multiple things. So, you know. But anyways, there's enough instructions there. Should be able to get us going. Everything looks pretty much straightforward. So that's good. So everything's looking good. So now it's going to come down to how we're going to mount this. Again, I think it's something I'm going to go ahead and sleep on. And so you'll see next step in the video which way we decided to go. All right, folks. So very shortly, what we're going to do is we're going to move to the bench, and we'll get started with the tool. But in order to use the tool, of course, you have to fill the primer tubes and all that. And so if you've ever used a progressive press before, you're probably very familiar with these. They're pretty much identical to the ones that I have with my Hornady press. So, you know, probably the same manufacturer makes them. So like I said, if you've used a progressive, you know what these are. Pretty easy to use. One of the things that the primer tool does not come with is this tray right here. So I think a couple different manufacturers make them, but I bought this a couple years ago, and the RCBS primer tray. What it allows you to do is to use this tool here. It just gets you all set up for it. So the little grooved section, you can put your primers on there, shake them around a little bit, and basically get them anvil side up. And then what you're going to do is you're just going to take this piece right here, and you're just going to flip it over, and then boom. So now, well, hopefully not boom with primers, but so now to use it, the one thing that we're going to do, again, if you've never used these before, is what we want is we want the butt end of the primer to be face up. So that way it just allows us with our little primer tube here to start picking them up and getting them in the primer tube. So pretty easy. We just have to go around, and when you're doing this, you just have to watch with the tray. I usually keep a hand on it just to make sure it doesn't flip, because I've spilled almost 100 primers on the ground before around me, and that's not a fun thing to do. So usually I just keep a hand on it just to make sure nothing moves there. And the primers that we're using for this is the Cellular and Below primers. These come from back in the good old days, back last decade, whenever Cabela's brought them in by the truckload. And so it was nice because for a while there, they were retailing them for $19.95 a thousand, or $19.99. So pretty good deal. But yeah, so pretty simple. Won't bore you with too much more of it, but basically that's the deal. You'll just use this to pick up all your primers, and then once you have as many primers as you need for the job that you're doing, you'll just take it back over to the press, and we'll show you how to hook it up there. Very easy. Once you slide the tube in, we just pop that off there, and the primers will just slide down and just feed one after another. So pretty simple. Okay, so now we are moving on to the bench here. Now, as I mentioned in the first video, I was considering different options in terms of how to actually mount this tool and how I was going to use it. One of the things I considered was just screwing it into a block of wood and then using essentially a clamp or something to hold it down to kind of make it more portable. And then as I was kind of thinking about things, RCBS, the one thing is they offer this plate right here. I've used it before for my rock chucker and the powder measure, and worked pretty good, easy to mount, no big deal, just very easy to kind of set up and all that. So, after thinking it through a bit, I was like, I can sit there and spend all this time trying to rig up something for it, but the easiest thing to do is to spend the 35 bucks or whatever it was and just get this plate and just mount it to that, and then it's an easy day, So that's what I ended up doing with it, and I think that's probably the best solution at the end of the day. So with our primer feed tube, if you remember with that, we were just talking about that. Essentially, we just go ahead and drop it in here. Pull the cotter pin out, and the primers just slide right down in there, and then you just got to feed them in one at a time. So essentially just work the lever, and the feed tube comes forward, drops your little primer right in there, and you're good to get started. The other thing with this that I like is that RCBS, some of the stuff that I have kind of found with theirs in the past is kind of a bit fiddly in terms of changing things out or whatever it might be, or making changes. And the nice thing with this is that these little doohickeys here that hold the primers, if you want to change them out, you just pull the last one out and then put the next one in. This one's for our large primers, and it just slides right in there. And then when you're not using it, there's a little hole for it to sit right there. Easy day, The other thing that you're going to need too is your shell holder, though. So, of course it doesn't come with shell holders, just uses your regular shell holders. So whatever you're using for that particular cartridge at that time, you're just going to need to slide that in there, and then you'll be good to go. But once it's mounted to the press, I mean, it's all nice and solid, so I think I made a good decision in going with the RCBS plate. And then to use it, the thing that I kind of learned with it from the get-go is just kind of trying to decide, you know, work out some sort of good rhythm with it. So it's a little bit harder to do on camera because I got the phone right up here filming and all this stuff. But, you know, whenever the camera's not here and I'm working it, I can start to bang them out pretty fast. In terms of the feel with the lever, the nice thing is that it's just a little push downwards. So you don't have to really crank on it or anything like that, or kind of like if you're using a hand priming tool, you know how a lot of times with those you're either squeezing or pressing with your thumb or something like that. And then, you know, your hands get wore out or whatever it might be if you're trying to prime a bunch. With this, it's just a nice little push on the lever and, you know, it's in there. And then there's our primer right there, good to go. And then to get the next one, basically we just got to work that lever, get the next primer, it'll drop right in there. Get our next piece of brass, slide that baby in there, and then just a little amount of force in the lever there, and it's in, okay? And, you know, one of the things I find with it is that it also gives you, there's some good leverage there, but also just gives you a good feel as you go to seat the primer, you know. So you can feel it going down and seating the primer, and you know, it just gives you a good feel and just works pretty good. So just nice little bit of pressure there, and we should be good. Yep, primer's all in there, all good to go. On to the next one. So again, it's a thing I think you just kind of get in your rhythm and, you know, away you go. And a lot of times what I do whenever I'm, you know, doing a lot of case prep where, you know, like with the Lee app or something like that, where I'm doing a bunch of resizing, or in this case where I'm priming, a lot of times what I do is I like to do, like with this for instance, if I fill the tube up with 100 primers, I have one jar where I have my brass that needs primed, the other one right here where all the brass has been primed, and then it's just a matter of come out, you know, fill up my tube real quick, bust out 100, and then go on to something else, you know. But there again, you know, nice little bit of feel there as the primer slid in, and then we're good to go. It's pretty easy. So far, I haven't found any hiccups with it or any sort of issue, you know, in terms of any sort of weird hang-ups, or so far it's been super reliable, no problems. Haven't had any trouble seating the primers or anything like that. The other thing too is that these S&B primers, they're slightly, just a little touch bigger than American primers. So a lot of times they kind of, you know, go in a bit tighter. So that's the thing with this tool. So far with these S&B primers, it's worked pretty good. No problems at all. Everything's looking pretty sweet. So in the end, I gotta say with this is that I'm happy with my purchase. So I didn't have good luck with the Frankfurt Arsenal hand priming tool. The previous RCBS hand tool that I used, I wasn't a fan of that either. The Lee tool that I'd had before, that works, yeah, you know, that worked pretty good for years and years, but you just get tired of working the thumbs all the time. So this is nice. It just makes priming easy. There's not a huge amount of effort in it. You get a good feel with the tool. No mechanical jams or hookups. It's a simple design. And yeah, I think for me, the thing that it comes down to is that if it's easy to use and does the job well, and, you know, in this case, seating the primers, it seems to do a really good job at it. You know, I'm pretty damn happy with it. So, at least from what I've seen so far, with doing hundreds of pieces of brass so far. Just been very happy with it, and you know, I think it's a tool that I'll be using for years to come, you know. And right now, in terms of priming tools out there, this is the best one that I've come across, to be honest, in terms of what's on the market. But you know, I'm always open to suggestions and trying different tools and stuff, but right now I'm pretty happy with this one, so I think I'm going to stick with it. Anyways, folks, hope you enjoyed this little review, and for me anyways, it's worked quite well. Very happy with it. Stay tuned, because we got a lot of other stuff coming up soon, and I'm working on a lot of different projects, and so you might be surprised at what you see coming up. Anyways, we'll see y'all soon.